The moment Archer took the microphone at the annual police gala, the room hushed in anticipation. He had practiced this speech 100 times in the mirror, but nothing could prepare him for the weight of Miles' hand in his own as he pulled his husband forward on stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends," Archer began, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "Tonight isn't just about awards. It's about family. And my family is right here beside me." The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then erupted as Miles, with their 8-year-old adopted son Ethan waving shyly from the side, stepped into the spotlight. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd of officers and their spouses. Archer Thompson, the department's rising star, the guy everyone thought was the perfect straight bachelor, had just revealed he was married to a man. What no one knew yet was how this single act would ripple through the city, turning skepticism into solidarity overnight. But to understand how they got here, you have to go back 5 years. Archer was patrolling the streets of Portland, Oregon, a city known for its progressive vibe but still full of pockets where a cop's personal life could make or break his career. He came from a long line of law enforcement. His father, retired Captain Robert Thompson, had drilled into him the importance of duty, honor, and a traditional family. "A real man protects his wife and kids," he'd say during Sunday dinners. Archer's mother nodded along, hoping for grandkids to fill their big suburban home. So Archer buried his feelings deep, dating a few women casually to keep up appearances. It worked until the day he walked into a small coffee shop on his day off and locked eyes with Miles Rivera. Miles was behind the counter, sketching in a notebook during a slow hour. He was an art teacher at the local elementary school, with a warm smile and eyes that seemed to see right through people. "Black coffee, no sugar?" Miles guessed correctly as Archer approached. They chatted briefly about the weather, but something clicked. Over the next weeks, Archer found excuses to stop by. Their conversations grew longer, moving from coffee to walks in the park. Miles was open about his identity, having come out in college and built a life free of secrets. Archer, however, wasn't ready. "I'm not like that," he'd tell himself at night, but the pull was undeniable. Their first date was a secret picnic by the river. Archer arrived in civilian clothes, heart racing. "I don't usually do this," he admitted. Miles laughed softly. "Neither do I with closeted cops." It was light, but it set the tone. They fell in love slowly, carefully. Archer's job demanded discretion. The force had come a long way since the old days, but old attitudes lingered among the veterans. Miles understood, or at least tried to. They built a life in the shadows. Shared apartment on the outskirts, quiet evenings, weekend getaways where they could hold hands freely. Then came Ethan. The foster system brought the boy into their lives during a particularly tough case Archer worked. Ethan, orphaned after a car accident, needed stability. Miles bonded with him instantly through art projects, while Archer taught him to throw a baseball. Adopting him together was the first big step toward commitment. They married in a small ceremony in Vancouver, just the 3 of them and a couple of close friends. No family invited. Archer wasn't ready for that conversation. Back at the gala, the initial shock was wearing off. Captain Hayes, Archer's boss, approached with a forced smile. "Thompson, this is unexpected. But if you're happy, the department supports you." Archer knew it was lip service. The real test would come Monday. Miles squeezed his hand, whispering, "You did it. We're in this together." Ethan tugged at Archer's uniform. "Dad, can we get ice cream after?" The word "dad" from both sides of the family felt right, but Archer's mind raced to the text from his father earlier that evening. "Saw the news. Call me." The drive home was quiet at first. Miles drove while Archer stared out the window. "You think your dad will ever accept this?" Miles asked gently. Archer sighed. "I hope so. But even if not, we have each other." Little did they know, the city was already buzzing. Local news had picked up the story from a live stream of the gala. By morning, Social media was flooded with support and criticism alike. Archer's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Colleagues texted congratulations mixed with awkward questions. One message stood out, from his best friend on the force, Jake Ramirez. "Dude, we need to talk. Breakfast tomorrow." Archer stared at the screen, stomach twisting. Jake had been his partner for 3 years, the guy who covered his back during domestics and joked about weekend beers. How do you explain 5 years of hiding to someone who thought he knew everything? Miles noticed the tension. Jake will come around. He's family too. But Archer wasn't so sure. The weight of every missed opportunity to be honest pressed on him now. The next morning, Archer met Jake at their usual diner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Jake slid into the booth, face unreadable. "So, husband, kid, when were you planning to tell me?" The hurt in his voice cut deeper than any accusation. Archer explained everything, the fear, the family legacy, the job. Jake listened, nodding slowly, but the easy camaraderie felt fractured. "I get it, man. But it stings. Thought we trusted each other with our lives." They left with a half-hearted fist bump, but Archer drove away feeling like he'd lost more than just a secret. At home, Miles was helping Ethan with homework, the kitchen filled with the smell of pancakes. Seeing them together grounded Archer. This was worth every risk. Yet the phone rang again. His father. He let it go to voicemail, but the message played on speaker. "Son, your mother and I are coming up this weekend. We need to talk about this situation." The tone left no room for debate. Archer hung up, chest tight. Miles wrapped an arm around him. "We'll face it together." Like always. The weekend arrived too fast. Robert Thompson stepped out of his truck in the driveway, jaw set like he was facing a suspect. Archer's mother trailed behind, eyes red. They sat in the living room, Ethan playing quietly upstairs. "This isn't you," his father started. "Cops don't live like this. What about your career? What about the boy?" Miles stayed calm, explaining their life, the adoption, the love that had built a home. But Robert wouldn't budge. "I raised you better." The words landed like punches. Archer felt the old shame rising, but this time he didn't back down. "You raised me to be honest, Dad. This is honest." The conversation ended in silence, doors closing softly as his parents left. Miles pulled Archer close on the couch. "That was hard, but you stood your ground." Archer nodded, but inside the doubt lingered. Was love enough when everything else pushed back? The week blurred with work, stares from officers, and late-night talks with Miles about whether to keep fighting or fade into the background again. Ethan sensed the tension, asking why Grandpa didn't stay for dinner. Archer lied gently, "He's just busy, buddy." By Friday, the department rumor mill had shifted. Some guys clapped Archer on the back in the locker room. Others avoided eye contact. Captain Hayes called him in. "The chief wants you at the community outreach event next month. Pride angle. You up for it?" It wasn't an order, but it felt like one. Archer agreed, wondering if this was the beginning of real change or just optics. Miles celebrated with takeout and a movie, Ethan curled between them. For the first time in days, the house felt warm again. Yet the cracks were there. Jake canceled their usual gym session. A colleague muttered something about special treatment in the break room. Archer pushed it down, focusing on patrol. One night, responding to a domestic, he found a young man hiding bruises from his partner. The kid's eyes reminded him of his own fear years ago. "You don't have to hide," Archer told him quietly after the arrest. The words echoed in his head all shift. Back home, Miles noticed the distance. "You're pulling away again." Archer denied it, but the argument simmered. "I did this for us," he snapped. Miles' reply was soft but sharp. "Did you? Or for the badge?" They went to bed without resolving it, the first real chill in months. Archer lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The Gala had opened the door, but walking through it meant facing every consequence he had avoided for years. The following Monday brought the first real test. A local reporter showed up at roll call, asking for comments on the gay cop story. Archer kept it professional, but inside he felt exposed. Miles texted support from school. "Proud of you. Dinner tonight." Archer smiled at the phone, but the weight of his father's unanswered calls pressed heavier. That dinner turned into the first honest conversation they'd had in weeks. Miles set the table with candles, Ethan already asleep after a long day of soccer. "I know the gala was huge for you," Miles said, pouring wine. "But I also know it's tearing you up inside." Archer pushed his pasta around the plate. "It's not just Dad. It's Jake. The guys at work. Even the chief watching every move now." Miles reached across the table. "Then let's fix what we can. Start with Jake. Invite him over. Show him the real us." Archer agreed, but the invitation felt like jumping off a cliff. Jake showed up Saturday with a six-pack and forced cheer. Ethan ran to him immediately, showing off a new drawing of police cars. Jake ruffled the boy's hair, but his eyes met Archer's with lingering hurt. Over burgers on the grill, the talk stayed surface level until Miles brought out photo albums. Pictures of their wedding, Ethan's first day home, quiet moments that proved the depth of their life. Jake flipped pages slowly. "You built all this without saying a word." The admission hung there. Archer explained the fear of losing the only brother he had on the job. Jake set the album down. "I get the fear, but hiding it made me feel like an outsider in your life." They hugged it out awkwardly, the friendship bending but not breaking. Yet the peace didn't last. Monday brought a department email. Mandatory sensitivity training on LGBTQ+ issues. Whispers followed Archer down the hall. One veteran, Sergeant Klein, cornered him by the coffee machine. "This you're doing, Thompson? Turning the force into some rainbow parade." Archer kept his voice even. "It's the law, Sarge. Times change." Klein snorted and walked away. The exchange left a sour taste, but Archer focused on the positive. The outreach event was approaching, and Captain Hayes had him leading a panel on community trust. Miles, meanwhile, threw himself into school art projects, channeling the stress into vibrant paintings he hung around the house. Ethan loved helping, smearing colors that mirrored their chaotic emotions. One evening, Miles pulled Archer aside after bedtime. "I found an old sketch from our first date. Remember how scared you were?" Archer laughed softly. "Terrified, but worth it." They kissed, the kind of slow, reassuring kiss that reminded them why they fought. The weekend before the outreach event, Archer's mother called alone. "Your father is stubborn, but he's reading articles. Give him time." It was a small olive branch, but it lifted some weight. Archer shared the news with Miles, who smiled. "See? Cracks in the armor." They celebrated with a family movie night, Ethan picking a superhero flick where the hero's secret identity finally got accepted. Archer held Miles' hand in the dark, feeling the first real hope since the gala. But hope invited complications. Jake invited Archer to the range for some one-on-one time. Bullets popped as they talked between shots. "I told my wife," Jake said. "She wants to meet Miles properly. Dinner next week." Archer agreed, relieved. Yet on the drive home, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Local officer sparks debate after gala reveal. The article quoted anonymous sources questioning if Archer's personal life affected his performance. He pulled over, gripping the wheel. Miles called immediately. "Ignore it. We knew this would happen." The article spread. Social media divided the city. Some praised Archer as a hero. Others called for his resignation. At work, the tension thickened. Captain Hayes pulled him aside. "Chief wants you low-key until the event. No interviews." Archer nodded, but the order stung. That night, he and Miles argued again. "Maybe we should have waited," Archer said. Miles' eyes flashed. "Waited for what?" Another year of pretending? Ethan deserves better. The words cut because they were true. Archer slept on the couch, the distance growing. Morning brought a breakthrough. Ethan woke early, climbing onto the couch with a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "For my dads," he said simply. Archer's throat tightened. He woke Miles and they sat together, the drawing between them. "He's right," Miles whispered. "We fight for him." They reconciled with quiet promises, the misunderstanding fading into determination. The outreach event arrived under gray Portland skies. Archer stood at the podium in full uniform, Miles and Ethan in the front row. He spoke about trust, vulnerability, and the families cops protect, including their own. The crowd, a mix of officers and community members, listened. A few young recruits nodded visibly. Afterward, a teenage boy approached, tears in his eyes. "You gave me courage today." Archer shook his hand, the moment etching itself deep. Miles hugged him backstage. "You changed something today." But change came with backlash. That evening, Sergeant Klein filed a complaint about disrupted morale. Archer received notice of an internal review. The news hit like a punch. Miles paced the kitchen. "This is ridiculous." Archer stared at the letter. "I knew the risk." Jake called immediately. "I'm backing you. We'll get statements." The support felt solid, yet the doubt crept back. Was his decision costing the family more than it gave? The review meeting was tense. Archer defended his record, citing commendations and 0 complaints. The panel listened, but Klein's words echoed. Afterward, Captain Hayes pulled him aside. "You're not alone in this, but tread carefully." Archer drove home exhausted, finding Miles waiting with takeout and a note from Ethan. "Love you both." They talked late into the night, mapping out next steps. Miles suggested therapy for the family stress. Archer agreed, the decision marking another step toward openness. Weeks passed in a blur of patrols, school events, and quiet evenings rebuilding. Jake and his wife came for dinner, the conversation flowing easier than expected. Archer's mother visited alone, bringing cookies and tentative questions about Miles' teaching job. Small wins stacked up. Yet Archer felt the internal shift. The shame he carried since college was loosening its grip. One rainy afternoon, Miles surprised him with tickets to a local art show. They walked hand in hand for the first time in public, Ethan between them. No hiding. The simple act felt revolutionary. Back home, they danced in the living room to an old song, laughter filling the space. Archer whispered, "I love you more every day." Miles smiled. "Even when it's hard?" "Especially then." The internal review cleared Archer with a warning. Relief washed over him, but he knew the battle wasn't over. His father still hadn't called. The city watched. And somewhere in the tension, Archer realized the real journey wasn't the reveal. It was learning to stand fully in his truth without apology. The following month brought the Community Pride Parade, an event the department had never officially joined before. Captain Hayes asked Archer to march in uniform with a small contingent. "Your call, Thompson, but it could help." Archer discussed it with Miles over breakfast. Ethan bounced in his chair. "Can I carry a flag?" Miles smiled. "Only if your dads say yes." They agreed, the decision feeling like another bridge crossed. Training for the parade turned into family bonding. Miles painted signs with Ethan after school, bright colors spelling messages of inclusion. Archer practiced his marching steps in the backyard, laughing when Ethan mimicked him perfectly. Jake joined one evening, bringing his kids. The backyard filled with chatter, the fractured friendship mending stitch by stitch. "Never thought I'd be marching in this," Jake admitted. Archer clapped his shoulder. "Neither did I." But not everyone celebrated. Archer's father finally called the night before the parade. "Your mother wants to come watch." "I'm thinking about it." The hesitation spoke volumes. Archer kept his voice steady. Doors open, Dad. He hung up and told Miles, who pulled him into a hug. Progress. Parade day dawned sunny, the streets lined with spectators. Archer marched beside Miles and Ethan, their small group flanked by supportive officers. The crowd cheered as rainbow flags waved overhead. Ethan held his sign high, beaming. Halfway through, Archer spotted his parents at the curb. His mother waved. His father stood rigid, but he didn't turn away. The sight nearly brought Archer to tears. After the rout, they met at the finish line. Robert shook Miles' hand stiffly. You take care of my son and grandson. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. Miles replied quietly, always have. The day ended with a family picnic in the park. Ethan chased Bubbles while the adults talked. Robert asked questions about the adoption process, genuine curiosity breaking through. Archer watched Miles explain patiently, pride swelling. Later, alone with his father by the grill, Robert said, I was wrong about a lot. Takes a man to stand up like you did. Archer swallowed hard. Thanks, Dad. The words healed something deep. Yet the victory felt fragile. At work, Sergeant Klein's complaint had stirred others. A petition circulated quietly among older officers demanding traditional values. Archer ignored it, focusing on cases. One call involved a gay couple facing harassment in their neighborhood. Archer handled it with extra care, ensuring arrests and follow-up. The couple thanked him personally. You're one of us. The phrase stuck with him. Miles noticed the toll. One evening after Ethan was in bed, he suggested a weekend away, just the two of them. We need time to breathe. They booked a cabin in the mountains. The drive up was peaceful, windows down, music playing. At the cabin, they hiked trails and cooked simple meals. Under the stars, Miles asked the question they'd avoided. Do you ever regret coming out? Archer shook his head. Never. But I regret the pain it caused. They talked for hours, the honesty strengthening their bond. Back in the city, the petition gained traction. Captain Hayes warned Archer. Chief is watching. Keep your head down. The pressure mounted. Jake pulled Archer aside in the locker room. Some guys are saying you're distracting the team. Want me to shut it down? Archer declined. Let them talk. Truth wins. But doubt crept in during quiet moments on patrol. Was his presence harming the department he loved? The misunderstanding flared again when Miles overheard a phone call. Archer was reassuring Jake about work drama, saying, I don't want this to affect my badge. Miles interpreted it as shame resurfacing. Are we still a secret at work? The argument escalated. I fought for us publicly, Archer defended. Miles countered. But you still worry about the badge more than us. They slept apart, the rift reopening old wounds. Ethan noticed the tension at breakfast, asking if they were mad. Archer reassured him, but the guilt lingered. Therapy started the next week. The counselor, a calm woman named Dr. Patel, guided them through exercises. Vulnerability isn't weakness, she said. Sessions revealed layers. Archer's fear of disappointing his father, Miles' worry about being secondary to the job. Progress came slowly, but it came. One session, Archer admitted, I thought coming out would fix everything. It just started the real work. Miles squeezed his hand. Meanwhile, the city buzzed with the petition news. Local activists organized a counter-support rally. Archer stayed neutral, but Miles attended with Ethan. Photos surfaced online, Miles and Ethan holding signs. Archer stared at them, pride mixing with anxiety. His father called again. Saw the pictures. Proud of the boy. Small steps forward. The rally grew. Supporters gathered downtown, chanting for inclusion. Archer watched from his cruiser on duty, heart full. That night, he and Miles reconciled fully. I'm sorry I made you doubt, Archer said. Miles replied, We're stronger together. They made love quietly after Ethan slept. the connection reaffirming everything. Yet the climax loomed. The chief scheduled a department-wide meeting. Rumors swirled. Possible reassignment for Archer. He prepared his statement, heart steady. Miles helped rehearse. Speak from the heart. The night before, they lay awake talking about sacrifices. If I lose the badge, Archer said, we'll figure it out. Miles nodded. Home is here. The meeting room was packed. Archer stood when called. I joined to serve everyone. My family doesn't change that. The room was silent. Then Captain Hayes spoke. Thompson's record speaks for itself. Supportive voices followed. The chief adjourned without decision, but the air had shifted. Outside, Miles waited with Ethan. Archer hugged them both. We did good. The family drove home united, the future uncertain but theirs. The department meeting's aftermath brought unexpected allies. Several younger officers approached Archer in the parking lot, sharing their own stories quietly. One female sergeant admitted her sister was gay and thanked him for opening the door. The support felt like armor against the remaining resistance. Sergeant Klein avoided him entirely now, but the silence spoke louder than words. Archer focused on his cases, closing a string of burglaries that earned quiet nods from the team. At home, the rhythm returned stronger. Ethan started a new soccer season, and both dads coached from the sidelines. Miles' art students painted a mural inspired by the parade, inviting Archer to the unveiling at school. Standing in the classroom surrounded by bright colors and proud kids, Archer felt the pieces fitting. His father even attended one game, sitting beside Miles without tension. Small conversations about weather and scores slowly built bridges. But life tested them again. A major storm hit Portland, flooding low-lying areas. Archer's unit worked overtime on rescues. One call involved an elderly couple trapped in their home. Archer waded through chest-deep water to carry them out. The news covered it, praising the department. In the chaos, he barely saw Miles and Ethan for 3 days. When he finally stumbled home exhausted, Miles had kept everything running. School, meals, even calling Archer's mother to update her. You're a superhero, Miles said, helping him out of wet boots. The praise meant everything. The internal petition faded as the chief issued a statement supporting diversity. Archer's file stayed clean. Yet the experience left scars. In therapy, he unpacked the betrayal he felt from colleagues who turned away. Dr. Patel helped him reframe it. Not everyone changes at the same speed. Miles shared his own fears of being seen as the reason Archer struggled. The sessions deepened their understanding. Jake organized a barbecue to celebrate the storm rescues. The backyard filled with officers and families, including a few who had signed the petition but now brought potato salad as peace offerings. Laughter echoed as Ethan played tag with the other kids. Archer watched Miles flip burgers, the scene feeling like victory. Later, Jake pulled him aside. You showed us all something, man. Respect. The words closed the last gap in their friendship. Summer brought lighter days. The family took a road trip to the coast, renting a beach house. Ethan built sandcastles while Archer and Miles walked the shore at sunset, hands linked openly. Remember when we couldn't do this? Miles asked. Archer smiled. Feels like another life. They talked about the future. Maybe another child, maybe Miles opening a small gallery. Dreams felt possible now. Back in the city, Archer received a promotion to detective. The ceremony was small, but Miles and Ethan sat proudly in front. His father attended, shaking the chief's hand afterward. You raised a good man, the chief said. Robert nodded, eyes misty. The moment marked full circle for the family. Yet one loose thread remained. A young officer, new to the force, approached Archer privately. I'm struggling with the same thing you did. Any advice? Archer met him for coffee off duty, sharing without judgment. The conversation reminded him why the gala mattered. Paying it forward healed old doubts. Fall arrived with school routines and football games. Ethan made the team and weekends filled with practices. Miles' gallery show opened downtown, featuring paintings of their life together. Archer stood beside him at the opening, proud as strangers admired the work. One piece showed two men and a boy under a flag-filled sky. The title, Flags We Raise. Viewers lingered, some tearing up. The show brought media attention again, positive this time. A local station interviewed Miles about art and family. Archer watched from home, chest swelling. When Miles returned, they celebrated with champagne after Ethan slept. "We're really doing this," Miles said. Archer kissed him. Every day, winter brought the holiday season. The family hosted Thanksgiving, inviting both sets of parents, Jake's crew, and a few supportive colleagues. The table overflowed with food and stories. Robert carved the turkey, telling old cop tales that had everyone laughing. Miles' parents, who had always been accepting, bonded with Robert over grandparent stories. Ethan beamed at the head of the table. Archer caught Miles' eye across the room, the silent message clear. This was their win. But holidays amplified memories. Archer reflected on the gala night, the shock, the fear. He wrote a letter to his younger self, tucking it away. The act felt like closure. Christmas morning brought gifts and snow. Ethan opened a new bike, riding circles in the driveway while grandparents watched. Archer and Miles exchanged simple rings, renewing their vows quietly in the backyard. "Through every storm," Archer whispered. Miles replied, "And every flag." The new year started with promise. Archer's detective work thrived, solving cases that made headlines. Miles expanded his art classes to include community outreach for at-risk youth. Ethan thrived in school, his confidence reflecting the stable home. The family volunteered at a shelter, serving meals and listening to stories. Each act reinforced their purpose. Yet growth isn't linear. A minor misunderstanding arose when Archer missed Ethan's school play for an emergency shift. Miles felt the old pattern returning. They talked it through that night, Archer promising better balance. The badge isn't everything anymore. The conversation strengthened them. Spring brought the annual gala again. This time, Archer stood on stage not as a surprise but as an honored guest. He introduced Miles and Ethan to thunderous applause. The chief pinned a commendation on his uniform for community service. Looking out at the crowd, Archer saw familiar faces smiling back. Jake raised a glass from the side. His father nodded proudly. The moment felt complete. Afterward, the family walked the city streets. Flags still flew from the previous year's momentum, now permanent in many spots. Ethan skipped ahead. Miles took Archer's hand. "We made it," Archer smiled. "We did more than that. We built something real." The year had transformed everything. From the shock of revelation to quiet acceptance, Archer had learned that courage wasn't one act but daily choices. Love wasn't perfect but persistent. And family wasn't given but chosen every day. The second gala marked a turning point no one anticipated. As Archer stepped down from the stage, the mayor approached with an announcement. In light of the courage shown by officers like Detective Thompson, the city will permanently fly pride flags at all public buildings starting today. Cameras flashed. The room erupted. Archer stood stunned as Miles hugged him tight and Ethan cheered. Outside, city crews were already raising the colors along downtown streets. News vans swarmed. Archer's phone exploded with messages from across the country. But the celebration carried shadows. Not everyone welcomed the change. A small group of protesters gathered outside City Hall the next morning, signs reading back to tradition. Archer drove past on his way to work, jaw tight. At the station, mixed reactions filled the briefing room. Some officers high-fived him. Others stared at their desks. Sergeant Klein retired quietly that week, his departure a silent acknowledgement. Archer felt no triumph, only the weight of progress. Miles turned the moment into art. He painted a massive canvas of the city skyline with flags waving, Ethan adding handprints at the bottom. The piece hung in their living room, a daily reminder. Ethan asked questions about the protesters. Archer answered honestly. Some people are scared of change, buddy. But love always wins in the end. The conversation felt like parenting at its core. Work intensified. As detective, Archer led a task force on youth safety, partnering with schools and Miles' art program. They created workshops where kids expressed feelings through drawing. One session, a teenager shared his own coming-out fears. Archer listened, then shared a piece of his story. The boy's eyes lit up. "You did it. So can I." Miles watched from the doorway, pride evident. The family dynamic deepened. Robert visited weekly now, helping with yard work and teaching Ethan chess. Conversations turned to regrets and second chances. "I almost lost you over pride," Robert admitted one afternoon. Archer replied, "You didn't. That's what matters." The healing felt complete. Archer's mother baked weekly, spoiling Ethan with cookies. The house filled with laughter. Yet external pressure tested them. National media picked up the story. Offers poured in for interviews. Archer declined most, preferring quiet impact. One persistent reporter cornered him at a coffee shop. "How does it feel to be the face of change?" Archer smiled politely. "I'm just a dad and a cop." The answer went viral. Miles teased him later. "Face of change, huh?" They laughed, but the attention brought new scrutiny. A serious case landed on Archer's desk. Threats against a local LGBTQ center. He worked long hours, coordinating with federal agents. Miles held down the home front, attending Ethan's games alone some nights. The strain showed. One evening, Archer came home late to find Miles on the couch, exhausted. "I miss us," Miles said simply. Archer sat beside him. "Me too. This case ends soon." They promised a date night, the small commitment bridging the gap. The case resolved with arrests, the center safe. Archer received another commendation. At the ceremony, the entire family attended. Ethan wore a tiny detective badge Miles had made. The moment felt full circle from the first gala. Afterward, they celebrated with ice cream, the city flags waving overhead as they walked. Spring turned to summer again. The family planned a big vacation to California, visiting Miles' old college friends. The road trip bonded them further. Ethan collected souvenirs while Archer and Miles shared driving duties and quiet talks. At the beach, they built a sandcastle as a family, the waves washing away the last traces of old fears. Back home, new opportunities arose. Miles was offered a position coordinating city art programs for youth. He accepted the role, allowing more time with Ethan. Archer supported fully, rearranging shifts to match. Their schedules aligned better than ever. Evenings became sacred. Dinners, homework, stories. One quiet night, after Ethan slept, Archer and Miles sat on the porch. "Remember the coffee shop?" Archer asked. Miles smiled. "Best black coffee of my life." They reflected on the journey. The secrets, the reveal, the fights, the flags. "Would you do it again?" Miles asked. Archer pulled him close. In a heartbeat, the city continued evolving. More officers came out. Community events multiplied. Archer mentored several, paying forward the support he received. His relationship with Jake evolved into true brotherhood, their families vacationing together. Fall brought Ethan's 10th birthday. The party filled the backyard with friends from school and the force. Robert manned the grill, Miles organized games. Archer watched it all, heart full. The boy who once hid his truth now stood openly as father, husband, and officer. Winter arrived with fresh snow. The family decorated for Christmas, hanging ornaments that told their story. A tiny police car, an art palette, a rainbow flag. On Christmas Eve, they read stories by the fire. Ethan asked, "Are we the happiest family ever?" Archer and Miles answered together. "We are now." The year closed with reflection. Archer wrote in a journal chronicling the growth. The Gala shock had been the catalyst, but every choice after built the life they deserved. Miles read the entries one night, tears in his eyes. "You turned fear into strength." New challenges would come, but they faced them united. The flags flew year-round now, symbols of a city that chose acceptance. Archer walked the streets with pride, hand in hand with his family when off-duty. The journey had taught him that self-discovery wasn't a destination but a daily courage. Love wasn't easy but worth every risk. And acceptance started within before it spread outward. The following spring marked 5 years since the gala. The city held a commemoration event at the same hall. Archer stood on stage again, this time with Miles and Ethan beside him as guests of honor. The mayor presented a key to the city, citing their role in fostering unity. Cameras flashed as the family posed. Archer looked out at the crowd, seeing familiar faces. Jake and his family, colleagues who had become allies, his parents in the front row beaming. The moment felt surreal. After the event, they walked the downtown streets lined with permanent pride flags. Ethan ran ahead, pointing at each one. "These are because of you, Dad," Archer corrected gently. "Because of all of us." Miles took his hand. "Especially you." The simple touch carried years of shared battles and triumphs. At home that evening, they reviewed old photos. The coffee shop selfie, the adoption day tears, the first parade. Each image told the story of growth through conflict. Archer reflected aloud. "I thought the reveal would break everything. Instead, it built us stronger." Miles nodded. "And taught us what family really means." Ethan fell asleep between them on the couch, the perfect symbol of their bond. Work continued meaningfully. Archer led diversity training now, sharing his story to help others. Miles' programs expanded citywide, reaching hundreds of kids. Their combined efforts created real change. One graduate from Miles' class wrote a letter. "You showed me I could be me." They framed it. The family dynamic flourished. Robert and Archer's mother traveled with them on vacations. Jake's kids and Ethan grew up like cousins. Life's ordinary moments became extraordinary. Soccer wins, art shows, quiet dinners. The misunderstandings and betrayals of the past felt distant, lessons rather than scars. One quiet afternoon, Archer stood in the backyard watching Ethan play. Miles joined him. "What are you thinking?" Archer smiled. "How far we've come. From hiding to this." They embraced, the sun warm on their backs. The romantic happiness they'd fought for was here, steady and real. The city flags waved in the breeze, a constant reminder. Archer had faced every test. Family expectations, societal pressure, friendship rifts, personal doubts. Each decision shaped him. The sacrifices led to deeper love. The truths he confronted built unshakable strength. As evening fell, the family sat on the porch. Ethan asked about the future. Archer answered honestly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Miles added, "That's the real win." The moment crystallized everything. True or false, love always requires sacrificing everything for acceptance in society.